Welcome to FEO on the Air, the voice of the festivals and events industry in Ontario. This week, it's Supplier Spotlight with your host, Jay Nijhuis. Good morning and welcome to FEO on the Air Supplier Spotlight. I'm your host, Jay Nijhuis, and today we are shining the spotlight on our friends from Little Electric. Joining us today, we have Rakesh Singh and Joe Privatt. How you doing this morning, guys?
Good, good. Thanks for having us.
Oh, thanks for joining us. I really
Much, Jay.
appreciate you taking the time. What I usually like to do to start these conversations is find out a little bit about yourselves. Maybe, Rakesh, you could start. Tell us a little bit about your experience in the business and how long you've been with Little Electric.
Sure, yeah. Quite a while actually, as we were just discussing off air there. I started working with Little Electric in high school back in I'm going to age myself now, 1998. And I've come and go. I did my apprenticeship with another company, Automation Tooling Systems here in Cambridge. They specialize in like robotics and automation. And then had left there, came back to Little and worked in the temporary power division of Little Electric here. Left again for a little 2 year stint, and then came back in I think it was 2014 as a partner.
Fantastic. Joe, what about you?
Yeah, for me, Jay, electrical wasn't my first choice out of post-secondary there. However, I was injured about 16 years ago, just had a medical injury. And Rakesh, my friend, called me up and he said, "Hey, are you interested in switching careers?" And I said, "Absolutely." And here we are almost 16 years later. Similar to Rakesh, I started on the tools out in the field in the temporary power division, helping out with many of the festivals and events that you guys partner with. And yeah, it's been a great story ever since.
So it's pretty safe to say we're talking to two gentlemen with quite a bit of experience in the field.
Yeah.
I think so, yes.
Well, when I come up with the questions for this podcast, I try to put myself in the shoes of festival and event organizers and ask questions that they probably want to know the answers to so that they can book you guys for their festival or event. So I kind of broke some questions into different categories. The first category, planning and preparation. And the first question I have for you is, what information should a festival or event organizer have prepared for that initial meeting with you guys to discuss your services?
Yeah, that's a great start here, Jay. Certainly on that first initial phone call or email, we're definitely going to be looking for the dates of the event, whether that be the setup date or operational dates, removal dates of the event as well. We call that the strike in the industry when everything gets taken apart after the festival or event is over. The other important item for us, and this may be the most important thing, and you're going to hear this a lot in this podcast, but it's a detailed map, overhead map of the site. That is a very valuable tool for us when planning out the electrical infrastructure. Also, a spreadsheet or a corresponding list to go along with that detailed overhead map that lets us know what your vendors or your AV supplier has requested for power as well. And that gives us the information to put some equipment packages together and really start coming up with a final price point for the estimate for your event.
Well, that kind of leads into my next question is when a festival or event organizer is planning their power needs, what, in your experience, are some of the biggest mistakes they make when they're planning?
Yeah, that's a great one as well. What we find often is an event planner will come to us and have a layout that is very spread out. Obviously, sometimes that's necessary, but in a lot of cases, it's not as necessary as people think to spread their festival out on a giant footprint. That adds a lot of costs in infrastructure, whether that be power for us or water, things like that, things that event organizers don't necessarily think of right away. Another tough one for us is if they don't allow enough setup time on site. So if they try to squeeze us in only a few hours, and maybe it's a really large event that we need to bring in a very large crew for at that point, which drives costs up, you know. But we can kind of adjust to any curveball that the organizer would throw at us on site. It's just a matter of, the smoother things go, the more cost effective the event is.
And Rakesh, we were talking earlier before we started the podcast about how busy you've been this summer and like dozens and dozens, if not 100 events that you guys have been involved with this summer. How far in advance do you recommend a festival or event organizer try to book you for your services?
The more notice we have, the better. We generally recommend about 3 to 6 months out. I mean, however, if you called us today and said, "Hey, I have an event next week," it's really last minute. If we're available and we have the equipment available, we're there to do it. But generally speaking, especially in the summer, in the middle of the summer, if you call us a week out, it's a 50-50 shot if we have the equipment available and the staffing available to pull off your event.
Yeah, I imagine the calendar fills up incredibly fast.
It does. So it's always best to, shoot us an email, pencil in a date, even if it's okay, I've got a new event coming up next August. It's the second weekend in August. More details to follow, but can you just like pencil us in, kind of as a placeholder? And then that
Yeah.
helps us as well because then what we can do is, okay, the events are starting to trickle in on that weekend. We should reach out to that new event, let them know it's starting to book up. So let's try and get some more details going, get it locked in.
Well, yeah, because you have to dedicate equipment and staff
Correct.
far in advance, so they have a schedule as well. So it makes sense. The sooner the better for you guys. The next category, safety and reliability. Safety, obviously huge, especially when you're talking about electricity. What safety measures should organizers be aware of when dealing with temporary power setups?
When it comes to the temporary power setups, it's going to be site lighting is definitely important, especially once your event, most events run into the evenings, usually around 11, 12 wrap up. So you definitely want to have adequate site lighting for two reasons, and not only two. I'm just going to mention two. Obviously, security being one of them, but safety. Trip hazards. What you'll see happen at night, especially if there's not a lot of light and you're in a park, for example, with an uneven surface, is you will actually get shadow casting that makes it very deceiving. On especially on a hill, it almost looks like it's flat, but it's not, and you can get into some tripping hazards that way. Um, Cable mats and tying back to tripping. Cable mats are great, but they also are a trip hazard. We have noticed in the past, I would say in the past 2 years, a lot more tripping happening on events. So we really try and uh, encourage the organizer to try and have more of a backline behind the scenes, if you can, and that way there is no cables crossing the middle of a really high traffic area where uh, people can potentially trip on it. So that's the other one. The other one is ESA, Electrical Safety Authority. Definitely want to make sure we've got, the permits are taken out, the event has been inspected, and so on.
So do you handle the permitting process for your customers, or is that something else they're required to do with their municipality or their city?
Nope, we handle that for you.
Great. Yeah, I think that's why when you go to a lot of these outdoor events, they have like front-facing vendor villages, which allow all of the electrical equipment to be hidden kind of in the back out of the traffic areas.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we call that a backline in the industry. We always want a nice backline to run everything along, and that goes for, water, hydro, everything, all the infrastructure that's needed.
right.
Yeah, and
So
like,
go ahead.
go ahead, Jay.
Go ahead.
I was just say it looks a lot cleaner too when you show up to an event and you don't have infrastructure crossing high traffic areas. It's hidden behind the scenes and it can stay behind the scenes. So if there is extras that need to be added or maintenance that needs to be done, it's all done behind the scenes.
Excellent. So many times when you guys are providing electrical equipment and supplies for vendors, stages, AV, lighting, safety systems, all of those things are running off your grid. I imagine there's a process in place if there, God forbid, is a power outage during a live event. Could you maybe touch on that a little bit?
Yeah, of course. Depending on the size of the event and the caliber of the event, we would recommend a backup generator. And there's two scenarios we can do in that, which we've done numerous times in the past. We could have one standing there as standby, so it's not running, but it's there right beside the running generator. And in the event of a failover, we can just switch over the conductors and go. Or they're both running, and we have the capability of having our generators actually synchronized together. So essentially one generator is large enough to handle the load for the whole event, or let's say if it's just feeding the stage in this example. And if that fails, the other generator is already running and it's all seamless. So there's zero interruptions. We also would recommend site support. So we're already on site. Our technicians are there monitoring the generators, walking the site, checking in with the vendors, making sure they're not having any problems, and just being proactive. Some of the smaller events, if they can't do the site support, we do have a 24-hour emergency line.
Perfect. So it's kind of like people who live out in the country and their power goes out and the generator kicks in automatically in a seamless
That's
way.
right.
You don't even realize the power's gone out.
You got it.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That's a great way to run things, especially if you've got a band performing on stage
Yeah,
and the power goes out, the generator
Mhm.
kicks in, and you don't even notice because nothing's
exactly.
been
Yeah,
interrupted.
we do
Yeah.
find most large concert setups will go for the backup generator option. Obviously, it's a little bit of an extra that you have to add in there in the equipment package, but we do find the large majority of more grandiose scale concerts will go for a backup generator.
Yeah.
They can't
Yeah.
afford to
And
have that downtime.
no, I think that's one of those extra expenses that can clearly be justified
Absolutely.
in the line budget, and for peace of mind, if nothing else.
Mhm. Well, and at the end of the day, it is a mechanical piece of equipment, and we are very on top of our proactive maintenance, and you can be as proactive as you want. At the end of the day, it's mechanical, and there is a small chance, it's very small, that you still could have a failure, and that's why we have the backup.
I'm not sure if Peter from the Toronto Garlic Festival has to leave early, but he was hoping you guys could share your email address. Maybe
Oh,
let's
sure.
just knock that off real quick now
Yeah,
in case he has to leave, and
absolutely.
then he's got your info.
Sure, Peter. It might be best to reach out to myself at Joe at little hyphen electric.com.
Perfect. Thanks. All right, so the next category for the questions I've got is logistics, which is also a huge thing to take into consideration when you're planning a festival or event. Can you maybe walk us through like what an event day looks like from the time you arrive to powering up to tearing down?
Yeah, absolutely. I can take you on that ride, Jay. Bear with me. It's a long one, but everything starts in the office with the customer ahead of time. Once all that's taken care of, we obviously have setup day, right? And that's a big day for everyone. We know that the festival organizer has a lot on their plate already that day, so we try to make things as seamless as possible. My team at that point will arrive in the morning or whatever designated time is scheduled by the organizer, and they will have been briefed in the office ahead of time. So we'll sit down together, go over the entire layout, so that when they arrive, they can sort of get right to work without taking too much of the organizer's time. However, when we do arrive that first morning, we'll have a quick 5-minute chat with the organizer to make sure nothing has changed. And things change all the time, as everyone in this room knows. So we'll just make sure we knock off any of those changes right away. Once we've met with the organizer, normally first up, we will place the generators and make sure those are properly grounded. After that, we will get started on running the backline, which is the larger cables behind the big food vendors, the craft vendors, and then over to the stage as well. The AV company usually requires their power first. So we will turn that generator on for the AV company and make sure that they're live and happy over there on stage. And then we'll get into running the rest of either the food vendors, craft vendors, organizer area, whatever they would like next. We will stay with them for the entire day. And when we think we're done everything on our checklist that the organizers provided, we'll make sure to grab the organizer one more time and take a quick walk around the site, showing them exactly what we've got set up, making sure all the vendors are happy, especially the AV vendor on stage, because they're normally the highlight of the show. And at that point, we'll sign off for the day and continue on to day two if that's necessary. If not, that might lead directly into site support, where I'll have a technician stay in the evening or all weekend to sort of hang out on site, talk to the vendors, check fuel levels, check the generator diagnostics, make sure everything's looking good all weekend. Keep in touch with the organizer on any last minute needs that might come up on a Saturday or Sunday morning. He'll get that run up. And then After that, we get to the event strike day, which is normally in our case, Sunday evening. A lot of these festivals are ending, so my team will arrive as soon as the event has ended in the large trucks and pickup trucks, and immediately get to work. I've had customers call us ghosts in the past because they don't even realize we're there on strike day. In and out
Yeah.
so fast. We don't need to talk to the organizer much on strike night. We can rip all that equipment out very quickly and efficiently, and then we're out of there by hopefully midnight on the road back to the shop to do it all again next week.
Just curious, do you wait to hear from the organizer after the event's done, or do you make it a habit to send out a follow-up email the week after just to, find out if all of their expectations were met, anything they'd like to change for next year? Do you follow up immediately to see if they need you next year? Like,
Mhm.
what's the customer, what are the touch points once
Yeah,
the
absolutely.
event's done?
We would always reach out immediately after the event, within a week, and that normally comes along with either a meeting or a phone call where we'll discuss the invoicing if there's any extras to add, or if there's a few things we didn't end up doing where maybe the final prices come down a little from the original estimate. So there's always a debrief, we call it. We'll do that over a lunch or a phone call, whatever's best for the organizer. As we do some of these events for 15, 20 years now, the debriefs have become a little bit more minimalistic. There's not as much to talk about now. They don't change too much each year. So it's a quick 5, 10 minute chat and maybe a few ideas for next year. And we get them booked in for the following year and reach out again a few months in advance.
Oh, it's pretty cool that you've got events that have had you back for 15 years. That says a lot about the service you provide.
Yeah,
They wouldn't have you back if you didn't do what they wanted you to do.
that's
So
it.
it's good for you guys. When you mention your tech staff, I imagine load in, load out. There's much more people there, but on site, how many people can an organizer expect to? I know some organizers might want to like arrange to have a bite to eat for people or whatever. Just how
Mhm.
many people are going to be on site for the duration of their event?
Yeah, that's a great question. So that corresponds directly with the size of the event and the footprint of the event, and exactly what we're running the power to. But in most cases, an organizer can expect between 2 and 8 technicians on site at all times during the setup and the strike. Um, and it's also based on the organizer's allotted setup time for us. So if we only have 2 hours to complete a large setup, we can do that. I might need to send 12 texts down, though, to really break off into different groups and sort of complete certain sections all at the same time.
So, coordination obviously is key.
Mhm.
When you've got like vendors, staging, sound, all requiring different amounts of power, is the coordination for all of that before you arrive on site, or are you literally popping into everybody when you get there saying, "So what is it you need?"
That's great. There's actually it's a little bit of both. So the organizers do their best in all cases to provide us with that detailed list and detailed map, but we fully understand that you're not always going to be able to get us the exact info that we might require when we're on site, and we're prepared for that. We'll show up with extra equipment, extra special connectors that might be for certain food vendors, things like that, and that'll allow us to sort of roll with the punches on site.
Yeah, and to
Cool.
add to that, a lot of the vendors that we see on the festivals, we've seen them from festival to festival. So even Joe and I and our staff, they already know, oh, that vendor, we already know what they need. We saw them last week.
Yeah, I guess they make the circuit, right?
That's it.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a small circuit at the end of the day, and everybody knows everybody.
Mhm.
Well, that's cool. So you actually have files on them, or you just remember?
You'd be shocked. You
Remember?
remember it all. Yeah, it's funny. You'd be
Wow.
shocked. Anyone new that you see, you'll immediately go up to that food truck or vendor and you kind of investigate their equipment to make sure it's approved and certified. But it gets locked in your memory pretty quick. They're all pretty unique in terms of trucks and what they sell, and they're all very friendly. So, yeah, it's surprising how quickly you memorize all of the different vendors.
Yeah.
Excellent. Budgeting and costs. That's another category that I had a couple of questions for you. How would you typically price electrical for a festival or event? What drives the costs up and what drives the costs down?
So there's a few key factors there. The setup labor. support labor if needed, your equipment, your generators, your fuel costs, and your permitting, so your ESA. The more stuff we can do, say, during the week, and I'll especially have our inspection done during the week, because ESA will actually charge you an overtime fee for a weekend inspection, or what they call an after hours inspection. So any of that stuff that we can try and get in that time frame will reduce some costs. Um, kind of tying back to the logistics of the setup, for us to be on site and to be really efficient, it's ideal to have some of the infrastructure already in place. So basically, especially like tents, stage, that sort of stuff. So then we can run what we referred to in the other question, that backline. If we get on site and it's just an open field, it's hard for us to set up any equipment because we don't know where the tents are going to go yet. The stage isn't in place yet. And we also run into the risk of equipment getting driven over. So there is that timing, because we can only set up as fast as the layout or the structures being going in place. So that is definitely is key. Other than that, I mean, again, clustering things together and keeping that backline versus spreading things out.
Yeah, so you really are kind of the last piece of the puzzle. You're going to kind of get in there once everything's in place and you're going to connect it all.
You got it.
Yeah. So obviously with, budgets being as tight as they are, funding is a little less than it has been in years past. Everybody's looking to save as much money, keep the cost down. Just wondering, is there an area that festival and event organizers can save money without compromising safety and reliability?
Yeah, definitely tie back to like a detailed layout, a detailed map with a list of what vendors require what, because then we can really tighten the scope up. Um, Apart from that, it ties back to the logistics. And we've worked with events in the past in the same scenario of, hey, we need to shave a few dollars. What can we do? So we sat down and worked with them and went over the load in and the load out and determined that, okay, you actually don't need us here Monday morning at 8 a.m. We can arrive on Tuesday and get just the same amount of work done versus, oh, there goes my light in here. Sorry.
No, it's good
Versus
now.
having us,
Need an electrician to fix that,
yeah,
yeah.
I'm standing too still. I'm not working hard enough. So basically going back to that, versus us having let's say a 2 day layout, or sorry, load in on the Monday, where we're kind of picking up vendors as they trickle in because the infrastructure is not quite there yet, as their tents are being set up. Where if give them the Monday to do all that, and we can come in Tuesday morning, 8 a.m. or 7 a.m. or whatever time you need, and crash that out, and really just tighten up the labor window on it.
Well, it's great that you're willing to do that because you're in the same boat as festivals and events. Things are tighter than they've ever been.
Yes.
And so the fact you're willing to do that to save them a little bit of money, it just builds trust, I think, in your organization. And another reason why people want to work with you.
Thank you. And if you tie back to the events in the downtown core, especially downtown Toronto, uh, you can't just stop your truck on the side of the road and say, "Oh no, I have to unload." You can just get ticket after ticket after ticket and cause a whole lot of problems. So having those windows of, okay, staging is coming in at this time, tents are coming in at this time. Okay, your time window to load in is at this time. Those really help tighten up the bottom line.
Debbie's asking a question. She would like to know what your service area is. Is it all of Ontario, or maybe you could just highlight where you guys will go to?
Joe, do you want to
Yeah,
take that
all
one?
of Ontario, essentially, Jay, what I say to the customers is wherever you want to pay us to go, we'll go anywhere. We've been into Quebec a little bit. I think before my time, the guys did a little bit in the US and also out Manitoba way. I know one of the other owners, Scott, there, he's traveled a little further than we have recently, but wherever the customer wants us to go. At some point, there is a cost strategy that the event organizer would have to look at. But certainly we have a long-standing event that we do here in Stratford every year, and they just started a second event that they do now in New York every year. And it was a big consideration to potentially get us down there to run that event for them for year one at least, so they were comfortable. But working hand in hand with them and the new provider in New York, we were able to figure out a solution for them, and they were well taken care of in New York as well. So
All right.
hear
So
that.
festival and event organizers, anywhere in Ontario that you're willing to send the boys, they will go
That's
and they
it.
will help you out.
Yeah.
So our conference this year, coming up in February of 2026 in Kitchener, is called Sustain. Sustainability, obviously a big part of the planning now for festivals and events. Everybody's trying to make their festivals and events more green, more nature friendly. And innovation also, trying and creating new ideas and executing new things, a big part of trying to get people to come back year after year. With there being a push for festivals to move in that green direction, how are you able to help organizers with their energy footprint?
Yeah, that's a great question, Jay. I think one of the biggest sort of misconceptions of us and these generators is that they put off they burn a lot of diesel, which is true. But the generators that we operate are fairly fuel efficient. They're not the nasty ones, let's call it, that you'd see on the side of a road on a construction site. They're sort of tuned for this type of event industry. They're very fuel efficient. What we would do normally for the event organizer, though, the first question on site is always, with your site, is there a shore power option? Which is to say, is there a building nearby we can connect to, do physical connections inside the building to eliminate the generators and then run power out to the site from there? And in some cases there is. A lot of the times, as the festival organizers will know, it's in an open field somewhere, and there won't be that option, which in that case you're sort of forced to do the generators at that point. The battery cell technology is coming a long way. It's not quite ready for use in Canada yet. There's a few examples where it has been used, but the cost effectiveness of that technology doesn't quite balance for any medium-sized event organizer at this point. It's quite expensive to utilize. So, currently, one of the other ways we try to help with greening and green footprint is we try to only run the generators during setup when needed. A lot of the times, the stage will only need power for a few hours on setup day 1, 2, and 3, just to test some lights and some audio. So maybe we'll fire up the generator there for a couple of hours and then shut the generator off when it's not needed, trying to save as much diesel as possible.
So you mentioned battery cells. Sorry, is that solar power?
They would
I'll let
be
Rakesh jump on that one
Yeah,
there.
they would be like large battery packs. So that is the next wave that we're starting to see, and we're following it fairly closely. There's actually a battery show coming up in October in Detroit that we're going to attend and get an idea what's happening. In the US, it's been deployed a fair bit now, but they haven't gotten approval in Canada. The approval in Canada, we just started seeing it about 6 months ago. We haven't physically seen one yet. We've been reaching out to some of our suppliers to get one into our shop so we can play around with it and maybe start doing some testing on some of the festivals and for next year. We have had a lot of festivals come to us saying, "Hey, like we want to try and get in on this and get some battery powered stuff on the site." And we're always the one that bursts the bubble and say, well, we can do it. It is getting there now, but you're still going to need a diesel generator to charge it up at night. So there is a break even point to it. I don't want to, obviously, I'm not trying to dismiss it. We're all for it here. And that's why we're following it really closely, because we want to start offering that. Short events, especially like film and TV, where they're off site or they're somewhere remote for doing like a 1 hour shoot. The application for the battery is perfect because they know what their power consumption is going to do. They can do the math and they know, okay, yep, this battery will be more than enough power to run our film shoot. Um, the larger events that are spanning, let's say, weeks. So, kind of going back to what Joe said, where it's a 2, 3 week setup for a 3 day event or a 4 day event. And during that setup time, the power requirements are so minimal that you could run off of battery and then have a generator charging that up on the off-peak time or at night. It's that flip-flop between generator running, charging a battery, and then running on battery, where you will find if you do plot it, there is a balance point where your fuel savings do offset it. But in the event world, you still have to rent a generator and you still have to rent that battery. So you really have to do the math behind it and you have to be pretty calculated. So kind of tying back to having that spreadsheet or a list of these are all my vendors and this is the power requirements that they need. And then we can start running the math on the back end of, okay, this is what size battery we would need to do this. And this is the estimated run times on those batteries.
So that delicate balance between eco-friendly and large-scale power is still leaning quite heavily on a generator at this point, but there is some light at the end of the tunnel.
There is. In the construction world right now, you've seen those small generators running a construction trailer. It's literally running a couple computers, some heat, and some air conditioner. Though the batteries have been deployed in that market for about a year or two now, where they know at night it's just literally running not even the lights, a little bit of heat and a little bit of AC depending on the season. So they know that it can run on battery all night. And when the generator fires up in the morning, when the shift starts, charges up the battery, and then they flip flop. Or another application, I don't want to get too off tangent here, is tower cranes. The tower cranes are only drawing power when they're actually running and lifting a load. Other than that, they're idling. And tower cranes require about 300 kilowatts of power. So the battery packs in that application has been huge.
So I have a section here that I'm calling advice for organizers. The first question I have is, what's one thing that you wish all planners knew about planning for an electrical layout?
Absolutely. I think it goes back to earlier in our conversation about layout is key. I think, what we find when we get these initial calls from event organizers is there's almost a sense of fear involved with electrical, right? We do find a lot of the time the event organizer will say, well, we're not really sure, or we don't want to touch that. We'd like to have you guys, and we totally understand that. The way our system works, with the equipment that we have and we design and build here at our warehouse is it's very user friendly for us and also for the event organizer as well. So if a vendor were to, let's say, trip on their cord and pull it out in their booth, it's very easy to go back and plug in. It's not scary looking. So, it's always good to know that there are contractors out there that have equipment that's not as scary as you might think and pretty user friendly. Going along with the layout, it's work on that layout really well, design those sections of the festival that need power and sections that don't need power. And right there, you can eliminate the use for a couple of generators if you keep everything in one large section of power, without having to spread across the entire event. Um, and again, always hire licensed contractors. That's key. We see from time to time events using volunteers to run the power. And that's great. And we understand that too. It keeps costs down. But in the end, the power is the one thing that you really don't want to take a risk on. People can get hurt fairly easy if the wrong people set things up, which leads into those ESA permits again too. Even for us, after setting up, we always have ESA come in and look things over. It's oversight even for ourselves, right? We want to make sure that we didn't miss anything, knock on wood, which we haven't. But it's always good to have that little extra bit of oversight there for the festival and that certificate at the end.
Yeah, and organizers have worked like for months so hard at putting this whole event together. They've got people relying on them that have put their faith in them to be a part of it. And to have something like the electrical cack out at the worst possible time because they didn't bring in a professional or didn't know what they were doing, that's catastrophic. That's something that they may not be able to recover from for
We've had to
next year.
rescue a few events. We've got that call on a Saturday night. Hey, the generators that someone else brought just went down. We need you guys right now. And most of the time we get out there to help, but sometimes in the summer we just don't have the equipment or all of the generators are on site at other festivals, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, before we wrap things up today, I thought I'd open up the floor to questions. If anybody would like to turn on their camera and their microphone and ask a question of Rakesh or Joe, please feel free to do so.
Hey guys, just sort of leading on your last thing, Joe, and I think it's so important is to involve you guys or whoever your electrical contractor is as early in the process as possible. Like, see if they can go to those site surveys with you to see what you're up against. Are you guys able to provide that kind of support to get out and have a look in advance so you know what you're up against as well? Is that an ideal
Absolutely,
situation?
Dave. Yeah, thanks for the question there. Absolutely. A lot of the time on these events, we will get out to site ahead of time and rendezvous with the event organizer. We'll take a walk. The organizer will have the map in their hands and we'll be sort of walking. A lot of the time for us, it's a snow-covered field because we'll do a lot of those walks in, January, February, March, preparing for that big summer festival season. But no, we love doing that. And that makes things easier for our crews as well. Once we've been there and we've seen the site, we've taken the photos, we've done those measurements from Google Earth, right? Everything just snaps together. It all comes together. That's a great point.
And I think it's fair to say, like, if you've hired a venue, the venues don't always have all the power you need. So I don't think it's fair to assume that whatever venue you've chosen to run your facility at, they're going to have the power necessary to run what you want to run.
That's correct. Yeah, a lot of the time we find they actually won't have the power required, or they may have half the power required and an option for us to maybe add a couple of extra breakers in their electrical panel. If it's an indoor venue, let's say, our electricians can come in a week before the event, add a couple of electrical breakers in there in the panel and run from there. And now all of a sudden we've eliminated the need for any generators or anything like that. And the power all stays in-house. And for a lot of those instances, the venue will actually pay us to leave that equipment there for them so they can use it in the future. And they can, advertise themselves more as an event venue with some more unique power options for festivals and events.
Anyone else with a question? Joe and Rakesh, maybe you guys could do me a favor and share a story where your good planning saved the day or their bad planning caused big problems.
That's an interesting
I'll let you
question.
take that one, Joe.
We don't have a lot of bad stories, which is good. We try to avoid those at all costs. So we don't see many big problems. But we do often say that good planning does always save the day. Specifically, we've had events where an organizer has booked the second generator or the backup generator, and they have had issues with the initial generator. But that secondary generator just kicks on right away, and it's very seamless. There's zero downtime. We've had 2 or 3 instances in the 15 years that I've been here where that's happened. It doesn't happen often, but it has worked out in their favor. So that pre-planning on the backline and the backup generator has really helped for sure. One thing that helps a lot with the festival organizer is having a site support technician, one of our guys, on site all weekend during the festival. Obviously, there's a little cost associated with that. But what I hear from every year from event organizers is, man, it is great having your guy here because any little thing that comes up, any little extra, if they need a new washroom trailer shows up out of nowhere and they want that plugged in, they just radio my teammate and out they go with their extra equipment and they'll just plug them in. And so I find that extra planning as well with that site support technician is very valuable.
Peter, I see you turned your camera on. Do you have a question?
Yeah, thanks a lot. And Joe and Rakesh, thanks for all your insights. We're the Toronto Garlic Festival, and this is our 14th year coming up September 28th. And our location is on Spadina Road between Davenport and DuPont. We're requesting with the city to get power from a power box or whatever. I'm not technically versed in this area, but we're asking the city for power. But a question I'm wondering is, by the time we go through all their hoops, does it make sense for us just to rent generators? And that's a kind of a broad question, but just, yeah.
Great question, Peter. It depends on how much power you're looking, how much you need, and how long your event would be. Because if you're gonna bring in a generator, you're into diesel costs, and depending on the length of your event, the cost of the fuel would offset the time required to jump through those hoops per se.
Okay.
Usually what we would do, and we've actually done this several times in the past, is you would send us pictures if you wanted, or we'd pop out there with you, go take a look and say, hey, I'm pretty sure there's enough power here for my event. We'd come in and look at it and say, oh yeah, definitely, we can run your whole event off of this. it's definitely worth going through the hoops. Or it's the other side and we say, it'll do about 50% of it. You're still going to need a generator, and then we can weigh the cost out between the two and see if the juice is worth the squeeze or not.
Yeah, because it's a 9 hour event.
Hmm.
It's about 22 vendors requiring, say, each a 15 amp appliance and a music stage.
Okay.
Yeah.
I believe I might have spoken with you last year, Peter. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we
Okay.
did have a discussion last year.
Maybe with one of our reps.
That might be it, yeah, to maybe
Yeah.
do some pricing on the event. And I think we did take a look at some of that for you as well. I can picture the layout, and certainly your event would be a pretty good candidate if the venue did have some power available. I think it would be a good
Yeah.
candidate to see if that would work out, yeah.
Yeah,
It's
we
right in front
always
of Toronto Art.
recommend.
Yeah. Pardon me?
I was gonna say we always recommend looking at the site power first before going to a diesel generator.
Right. Okay. Thanks very much.
No problem. Great question.
Jumping
Yeah.
off the back of Peter's question, guys, if you're bringing in a generator into a specific area and say it is a downtown core, are there bylaws that you have to go through? Is there paperwork that you have to go through to bring that generator in, or is that something you guys just take care of seamlessly?
Do you want to grab that one, Joe?
Sure. So in terms of bylaws, there are certain clearances we need to have away from buildings, 3 meters there, which is pretty standard, and it never really ends up that way anyways, where you'd want it closer than that. But not so much. We always have to get that ESA permit, and we have to find a good location to ground the generator, assuming it's over 10,000 watts, which most of them will be in this case. So a fire hydrant works for grounding. Telephone pole, guy wire works, a patch of grass. So you have to be a little more strategic when speaking on the downtown Toronto events. I have one going on today, going in. So it's yeah, you definitely have to be a little more strategic in your placement. But you don't have to worry so much about permitting and things like that. But the event organizer is always, they should always reach out to their liaison from the venue or if you're renting a spot on the street to make sure that there's nothing they need to do.
And you guys, when you're doing something for an event, you take care of all the ESA stuff.
That's right. Yeah, we'll have my team down there on site to meet the inspector and walk them through your entire event. Make sure everything's okay. If they find a vendor that maybe has some equipment they don't like or might not be approved, we'll discuss that with the vendor and the organizer and just make sure everyone's on the same page. And then we'll work together to get that up to code so that they can operate during the weekend.
Debbie, you have a question.
Yeah, I do. I'm curious, what do you find, like, is it more challenging to do like a street festival, like a 3-day street festival, than it would be to set up something like Boots and Hearts in a field somewhere?
I would
Or
say
is it just they each have their unique challenges?
they're definitely both unique challenges. The street events are a little tighter with getting equipment in, getting our trucks in, because you've got vendors generally loading in on each side. You've got crafters and food trucks, etc. And we're bringing our equipment kind of down the middle of the street, offloading our equipment, getting it set up. So it's not a challenge, but it's more you have to look at it from a different perspective of, okay, we can't just block the road and be like, well, little electrics here, we need to set up. So, you have to work more together with everybody. The space is a little tighter. It's kind of like having doing a reno project at your home and having the electrician, the plumber, the drywaller, and the painter, they're all at the same time. You kind of you got to work together. Where an event, we can stage our truck off to the side where we know it's completely out of the way. We don't need to move it, and then bomb around with our golf carts or the pickup trucks and set up
In the
gear.
field, yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure, Joe, if you want to add to that.
Yeah, I think Debbie there with a street festival. I love a good street festival. I think they're the most unique. The giant festivals in the fields are amazing too, but there's nothing like a nice street festival. But there are some challenges there. One of which being safety for our crews. There's a lot going on downtown. There's a lot more tripping hazards. You got curb lines you need to run the cables along. We use a lot more cable mats at a street festival. The ESA inspectors can be a little harder on those ones, as they should. You're definitely much more in the public eye versus a gated event. You mentioned Boots and Hearts. That's quite the example, but yeah, that's a much larger festival for sure. But that's a gated event, and you're not going to see any public in that space unless they've chosen to be there. Whereas a street festival, you might have someone just leaving their business for the day at 5 o'clock and have cables on the sidewalk in front of their office, right? So we find that safety is a bigger concern on the street festivals.
And I guess you all have to be very I don't know, like be able to handle the public or these small business people. I mean, that's something that I think as a company you'd have along with the organizer, but have to have the wherewithal to be patient with the small businesses on this street.
Yeah, we'll normally direct those conversations to the event organizer. We try not to get too involved with those type of conversations, but we're going to do our best to diffuse if there's any sort of situation. Or an example would be if the event organizer has placed the generator on the street where it works best for them, and the event doesn't necessarily work best for the accounting firm that's right there, right in front of it, right? So again, we can only do what the event organizer tells us to do, but we can also offer solutions if there is a conflict. We can try to help those two figure things out.
Talk about a full service organization.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Any other questions? All right. So Joe, Rakesh, let's share your contact information again for anybody watching or listening to the podcast, maybe your website and your email.
Yep. So you can hit us up on our website, www.little-electric.com. There is a chat window on there that does pop up. It's actually a text to chat that actually drops straight into our computer system and pops up on our screens. It's us. It's actually, me, Joe, Sarah, Scott, all of us in the office here that see that are actually chatting with you. It's not a third-party service or anything like that. So that's always a great option. Joe looks after pretty much 98% of all of the events. So definitely hit Joe up, joe@little-electric.com. Or you could always call us at the office line, 519-621-2500.
All right. Joe, Rakesh, thank you so much for taking time out of your very busy schedule to share your expertise.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you for
That was
having
fun.
me.
That was a good time. Thank you so much for having us on.
Make sure you join us next week when Marnie Lapierre talks to Chatham Retrofest and the Toronto Garlic Festival on festivals, helping festivals share our stories. Until next time, I'm Jay Nijhuis, shining the spotlight on our most important resource, our suppliers. Have a great day. Thanks for listening to FEO on the Air, the voice of festivals and events in Ontario.